Right, a little bit belated, considering it's almost the middle of February, but I want to recap what I've read in the month of January 2026. It wasn't a lot, but rather impactful, I would say. The first work I finished, well, you know what? I'll just go by size. Um, I finished this little Penguins classic short story, um, Lev Tolstoy, How Much Land Does a Man Need? This actually includes two stories. It includes How Much Land Does a Man Need and What Men Live By. And there's a little interesting tidbit on the back here. It says, a parable of a Russian peasant's bargain with the devil, considered by James Joyce to be the world's greatest story. And I was a bit surprised by that because I was, I wouldn't say underwhelmed, but I definitely came in with high expectations for How Much Land Does a Man Need? And it's certainly great. No qualms about that. But what really surprised me was the second short story in here, What Men Live By, which is about um, this impoverished cobbler who lives with his wife, and they do have children. I don't remember. I think it's like two young girls they have, and they're living hand to mouth. They're giving other people, their neighbors, money when needed, but they share a coat between the whole family. And this cobbler goes out to, I believe he's buying sheepskin to make a new coat. That's what it is. He's buying sheepskin to make a new coat, and on the way, he spots a young man who is destitute by the side of a church, and it's snowing, it's freezing cold, and he offers the man his jacket, and I believe he buys him a drink. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head, but those details sort of kind of matter, but not really. It's I'm trying to get the essence of it. Essentially, he's offering him the clothes off his back, and he brings him to his house for shelter. And his wife is pissed off because here he is coming back with his shitty jacket on some naked dude, and he's like, "You gotta relax, you know. This is the charity of a Christian, whatever." And she buys it. She buys it, and I don't know. Should I spoil it? I don't know. I mean, you can just read it. I don't know if I'm taking away much of the essence. I will just include this here. Just skip ahead maybe like 5 minutes or so, if anyone who was watching it at all, which is no one cares. But anyway, it turns out that this guy is an angel of the Lord, and he was cast out of heaven because he didn't kill this young mother um, who was meant to die as she was nursing her children. She just given birth, and she was meant to die, and he just couldn't find it within him to kill the mother. And God sent him down to Earth to learn three lessons, and the most core is what men live by. Answering three different questions, and that is like the final and most essential one. And he finds out what men live by is love. There is this little section. I in the beginning, before the story starts, there's a collection of Bible verses about how, to love is to know God, and you cannot love without loving your brother. You cannot love God without loving your brother. Those are the essence of those verses. And I don't know, I really was impacted by that one. I thought that was a really, really thorough. It sort of captured a lot of the reader's intrigue. You kind of didn't know what to expect, but you had your own suspicions. When I was reading How Much Land Does a Man Need, you can kind of glean how it's going to end, based off the sort of character of the protagonist, the peasant who seeks to keep earning more and more and more, obtaining more and more land for his family. And it starts off rather with this contention where the peasant man's wife is meeting with her sister, who is a city goer from Moscow. She marries I believe, a man with a governmental job and position. So she's fairly well off. And they have this sort of discussion, the sisters, about how, she has, her sister has all these nice dresses in Moscow and these nice living conditions, whatever. But the sister says she needs for nothing, she has her family. And I think from there you sort of get the idea Well, it's not really quite as I put it, now that I'm thinking about it. She's a bit more. They're rather. I don't know if catty is the right word, but they're at each other's throat about who lives better. Who is, Who needs for less, I guess. And, that sort of greed or proving your position, I think that sets the tone. And the peasants, I don't see him having that sort of equal mentality as the wives do. I think he sort of just seeks to relieve himself of as much burden of being the peasant rather than being the landowner as much as possible. He's often oppressed by taxes and, um, having to deal with intrusive land ownership policies, and then he ends up sort of perpetuating that himself when he starts to own land, which I think is can go back to the discussion between the sisters, right? I mean, essentially, we're all the sort of same person, and we have and our motivations sort of only change depending on our circumstances of our life. But we have to always keep in mind, we are essentially the same as people, and we shouldn't abuse our position just because we're allotted more land or more leniency than other people. I thought it was interesting. Really do highly recommend both of these. I think anyone really must read these. They're so quick. I mean, you'll get through them in less than a day. Second thing that I read was Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. I have a discussion about this. I think this goes on to my favorite book of all time. Like, a top maybe 5-10 list of favorite books of all time. I really adored this. This took up most of my reading for the month because I read it so slowly, so maybe not diligently, but I was hanging on to every single little word. And Vladimir Nabokov writes so deliberately. I felt that you can find yourself clinging to paragraphs a bit longer than you might actually comprehend them, sort of just to enjoy them. It's like when you drink a glass of wine, you're one of those wine connoisseurs. You drink it, you let the liquid flow through each cheek, you sort of savor the taste and try to capture all the notes. That's how I felt when I was reading Pale Fire, because there's a lot going on. It's so quick to read. I could have read it much quicker, but I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I paced it and was in no rush, and I really enjoyed it. Um, and I'm finding my thoughts are different than my first initial takeaway. The more that I think back to Pale Fire and reread certain passages, it's just very interesting. I will definitely reread this at some point. I think I'll give it a year though. I want to give it some time, sort of cleanse my mind of the first read and go back with as little predisposition as possible so I can take other things away from it. And lastly, the third and final book that I read for the month of January, meaning that I've read hardly anything, is Mikhail Bulgakov, The Master and Margarita, which really, really surprised me. I came into this having been recommended this book many times over. I knew it was about the devil in Moscow. That's about the extent of it. Later I came to learn it's a Soviet commentary, which you can catch on fairly quickly once you read it. It's not thinly veiled at all. It's very, Bulgakov is known for his Soviet commentary. There's another book of his called Black Snow I would like to read. He has some, just in general, very interesting works of fiction that I want to dive more into. But Master and Margarita, it really takes you for a ride. And sometimes you want to get off. There's just some absurd moments in this book where I'm not a fan of absurdism as it is. It's not like absurdism like Camus, sort of. It's just a little bit eccentric. Maybe a touch postmodern, I don't know. Maybe it sort of borders on it, I suppose. I'm no scholar on the subject, but that's just my what I glean from it. But it's just very rich in this religious and this political commentary aspect. I find it interesting how he sort of juxtaposes religion and the myth of Christianity with what you see in his critique of Soviet literary artistic spaces. It's just bizarre, honestly. I would not have ever thought of making such a connection, and you really have to read it to see it. It's so difficult to explain because, I mean, the length justifies itself, really, because the connection must be made over so many different, what am I thinking, like vignettes, maybe, I don't know, that's not the correct term. Stories being pieced together gradually over time. And it's just, for example, I mean, you don't meet the titular characters until halfway through the story, and then suddenly the whole thing completely shifts. I mean, it's just, when you meet the master for the first time, it really is, it's a second wind. It's a second wind, really. You meet the master, and then for me at least, it was at that point I was like, okay, I'm waiting for something to pick up, and this is a peculiar scene. And then he introduces himself as the master, and you're like, oh shit, I know what the fuck is happening now. And then the whole thing fucking switches. It's insane. It's so dramatic. And I think that's the thing with Bulgakov. I believe he got his start at theater. So he sort of knows how to use this sort of dramatism and what an audience looks for in an impactful climax. He's so... I mean, it was really so well done. I thought it was tremendous. And there are many times where I thought, why am I reading this? This little bizarre scene where Margarita becomes a witch, and she's just absolutely out of her mind. And she's flying through Moscow on this broom, and you get these obscene, it's just bizarre, moments. I mean, oh my god, what is happening? I'm reading this, what is happening? Why am I reading this? Is bizarre. I mean, I'm sure there's some significance to it, but it's still a little bit lost on me, but those points I was a little bit lost. But I kept going through. It was kind of difficult for me to read at some points, but overall, I don't have any regrets at all, and I knew each time where I was drudging through something that it would eventually pay off, and it really, really does. I mean, the ending of this book is so cool. I mean, there's a lot of mythology going on. It's just, I never really quite read anything like it, and I'm very glad that I was able to find this and read it. I mean, I don't know, it's just bizarre things for me to be thankful for, but I mean, goddamn, it's just a great book. What a lot of fun. It's just so much fun. And I don't always look to books for fun. I sort of hope for the opposite. I want to be challenged and pushed. I don't know if Master and Margarita necessarily does that, but it does. There's a lot to be learned about Soviet art, the life of the Soviet intelligentsia, and about Bulgakov's perspective as someone who's quite critical of it, as well as exploring his own imagination. I think that's really a treat, and what Bulgakov has to offer is really something extraordinary. So I had quite a fun month in January with these reads, and I was in no rush to finish any one of them. And again, I'm seeing the same pattern in February. So I'll just do a brief rundown of my February plans. Currently I'm reading Dracula. I'm almost finished. I really do anticipate to finish this probably within the week. My pacing is slower than I'd like. I've just been busy with schoolwork, honestly. I mean, I would have devoured this if I wasn't preoccupied with other things. Really tremendous book. I cannot wait to get into an analysis of Dracula. My god. What a great collection of characters. I would like a little bit more evilness to them, but I see the point of why they're not. And I think that it does benefit greatly that we have these great, well-natured characters fighting against the force of evil. I do love Dracula though, so unfortunately I'm gonna be very sad once he meets his demise. I'm also beginning to read Invitation to a Beheading by Vladimir Nabokov. Lesser known, of course. I believe this was written originally in Russian, translated by Dmitry Nabokov, his son, in collaboration with Vladimir. I have no expectations of this. I thought the title was interesting. I love Nabokov. I wanted to read something short by him to get through February, and this is what I had, so curious to see how it goes. And then also I will be reading, once I finish Dracula, Fathers and Sons by Ivan Tonegev. Is that how you say it? Every time I say his name, it's wrong. Anyway, this is my highlight really for this month. And once I finish this, there's some, I might get to Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe, but my priority really is to finish Dracula, get to Fathers and Sons. Invitation to a Beheading is a nice little detour, but Father and Sons is the main goal for the month of February. Anyway, they're short reads. Hopefully I can get them all finished if I'm not too preoccupied with other things, but I've been really enjoying just all of what I've read so far. Pale is definitely among my favorite works of literature I've ever read. I really think it's tremendous. Master and Margarita, not quite for me. That's not to say it's not a great book, but it just doesn't reach that height that I think Nabokov's. Also, of course, it is a translation. There's much that I'm missing in terms of the original Russian. Maybe if my proficiency actually gets to that level, I'll go back to read it in original Russian, but it will be difficult. It'll probably take many years, and then it's going to be a long time in the future. As of now, it doesn't quite make it. But yeah, I was very pleased in January. I was living life with these books. And hopefully by next month, I'll have a nice, clean commentary on both Dracula and Fathers and Sons. That's sort of my goal. I didn't expect to like Dracula as much as I did. I was honestly shocked. I picked this up inadvertently. It was at a reasonable price. It's probably about a year ago I picked this up. And then in October I thought, it's Halloween. Might as well start it. And I started in October, and it's now February, and I'm still trudging along. I'm just a slow reader. But really, really great book. Really great horror book. Dracula is splendid. I really can't recommend it enough. It has everything you'd want in a horror. Just a lot of an eccentric character in the madman. Dracula himself, very charming, very, very flamboyant, theatrical, a lot of fun. Great protagonist. Van Helsing, what a character. He's a lot of fun listening to his tirades, his little ramblings. He's so interesting. And this is inappropriate to do in this video, but anyway, that's essentially my January into February reads.